Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Curbs IndyCar Edition. I'm your host, Nate Woods, and we are here once again to discuss this previous weekend's IndyCar race at Barber Motorsports Park. It was the Children's of Alabama Grand Prix. I'm joined once again by my host, Thiemo Albers-Daly. Thiemo, how are we doing today?
Pretty good, thank you, Mr. Woods. How about yourself?
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. We made it through a hectic month of IndyCar, which
Yeah,
is
can you
not something
believe it
we've
only
had.
started at the start of the month?
I know it seems like we're already halfway through the season. We're not used to front loading the season like this. I kind of like it.
No, we're used to being in the heart of spring break right now, and instead F1's the one that's gone on spring
Yeah,
break, and IndyCar's
that's right.
just motoring along as per usual. And
Yeah,
I'm not complaining, but it's just an odd feeling.
yeah. I mean, we spent so many years going to St. Pete and then getting a month off.
For
So,
no apparent reason.
yeah. So, and we talked about for a long time that on these podcasts that IndyCar needs to do something with the front part of their season because there's too much time between St. Pete and the next race. I'm not saying that there's maybe too much at the front of the season now because I really enjoyed this last month, but it's nice to get a little bit of a breather.
It's not for overstuff, but I know what you mean. It feels like you've gone veering off completely in the direction now. And I think I like the fact that I only just kind of realized this has all happened in the space of a month. It hasn't felt like it's all been crammed in. It's felt like there's been enough of a gap to catch the beat, but I don't mind that there is now a couple of weeks until Long Beach and we
Mhm.
have a little bit more of a breather. And so
Yeah,
it's not, we're going to have the entire championship done by May. You go,
yeah.
damn, we've gone too far in the other direction.
Well, before we jump into it, we got a little bit of driver news. Um, it's I believe these were previously announced. I don't know if we've talked about them on the show or not, but Helio Castroneves and Takuma Sato have both been confirmed for this year's Indy 500.
Yeah, it was essentially a non-surprise surprise. It
Yeah.
just hadn't been confirmed. As you say, we had talked about it, I'm pretty sure, just assuming that they were going to be at the Indy
Yeah.
500. They didn't do what Ed Carpenter did and announce it all the way back in January.
Yeah.
And so I remember you and I were debating about that, I think, after Arlington, going, did Ed say he was going to be there yet or not? Because he usually is. And then when I was looking at these two to confirm if we'd actually had this or not, I went back and went, oh no, we have talked about this because Ed did, for some reason, in the middle of January, go, yeah, by the way, May's
Yeah.
definitely happening. So great to see both of these drivers back. They both were very memorable last year, Taku in particular. Some really great racing at the
Hmm.
front. If I wanted a wildcard driver to win the Indy 500, it would probably be Takuma Sato from the selection that we have so far. And if last year didn't even go, but he still got it. So no reason why not.
Yeah. Helio Castroneves obviously very strong at the Indy 500. He's a four-time winner. I almost don't want him to win. I feel like there's this mystique where you have this very exclusive club of four-time winners, and I don't want there to be a driver that has a fifth win.
It gives Alex Palou some other club to try and be part of then if there's a fifth.
Yeah, I think Alex Palou has an uphill climb if he's going to try to get to five Indy 500 wins.
He's got one already. That's all I'm saying, and I put nothing past that man. So I don't. I'm kind of with you on that one in terms of let's not break that record so that he
Yeah,
doesn't have someone to then try and beat or to join.
yeah,
Because then if he gets to five, he's gonna want that sixth because he's Alex Palou, and we don't need that.
yeah.
It's
Helio
it's all
Ca-
right as it is.
Helio Castroneves already had two wins at the Indy 500 by this point in Alex Palou's career. So,
Well, let's not go. We'll save that for later.
yeah,
Let's not go there right now.
yeah. We found out this week that the president of Long Beach Grand Prix uh, passed away. Jim, and I'm going to maybe butcher this name, Michelinian.
Your guess is as good as mine. I had a pronunciation right up until you spoke, and now I'm not sure at all. So,
McCallion. I apologize for
him
not
anyway.
having his name. Yeah. He'd been a long time supporter of open wheel racing. And so, um, especially going into that race, it's going to be pretty poignant. We had uh, uh, Barber was celebrated this weekend after his recent passing. And I'm sure that we will see a really poignant recap of Jim's life when we go to Long Beach here in a couple of weeks. So
Jim McLean, maybe? That works as a pronunciation?
could
Not.
be.
We'll find out. We've got everything covered, I think, now.
Yeah. Yeah. Kiffin Simpson had a weird penalty coming out of the Arlington race a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, last Thursday, I want to say this happened. So nearly 2 weeks after Arlington, he received a post-race penalty for avoid all contact, which I just, how does it take you that long? So this was essentially the contact on lap 69 with Siegel and Grosjean. He got put to the back of the field as a result. Not that that's going to really change much of anything. I think at this point in time, I don't think you're going to contest that. And even if you did, I don't think you're succeeding. But I just found it hilarious that we complain in other motorsport series about having results change a few hours after the race is finished, and this is literal weeks afterwards.
So my question for you, since you're also on the F1 side of things, IndyCar, they're showing they're going to go back and change the results after races. Where in F1, a lot of times it's okay, that penalty is going to carry over into the next race.
Mm.
Would you have rather have seen Kiffin Simpson receive a starting grid penalty for Barber, or would you rather have seen the results of a race 2 weeks ago changed?
Think in this instance, because from what I recall, none of those drivers were especially high up in the proceedings anyway,
Yeah.
and it seemed quite a bit like a racing incident on a brand new circuit for the first time.
Mhm.
I don't mind it as much here. If this had happened at Barber or if it had happened in Phoenix, I would maybe have then leaned away, like you say, of could we give him a three-place grid penalty or something? Because it wasn't a malicious move, it was just racing happens and
Mhm.
sometimes it goes a bit sideways. Um, so I think in this instance, no harm, no foul. And so it's just a sort of incredibly light slap on the wrist. But I think you'd have to come in for me here because I do not know. Is it often that you get a penalty for the next race in IndyCar? I don't recall an
No.
awful lot of them, if so.
Yeah. No, it's unusual to have a penalty assessed this far past the race. I don't agree with that. Just chalk it up to, like I said, a racing incident, brand new circuit. Um, I would really, really, really hate to see something like this happen at, say, like the Indy 500, where we
Mm.
get halfway into June, they're like, oh yeah, by the way,
I think that's where I would lean towards the
yeah,
okay, we've had a race or two since then, and for whatever reason, we've not gotten to this before now.
yeah,
But we're not going to alter the results of that race. We'll just give whoever a penalty for Iowa or wherever
yeah,
it is,
yeah,
because it just gets silly otherwise. And when you've got a championship as tight as this, you don't want to be doing that kind of business, do you? It just
yeah.
makes a
Not
bit of a
that,
mockery of the whole thing.
not that Kiffin Simpson is vying for the
No, but let's
championship,
assume that
but
someone else maybe next time does it.
yeah,
Mathematically, he's still in it.
mathematically, everybody's still in it still, yes. Um, one last bit of driver news. Hunter McElroy's name is popped back into the fray here in IndyCar, which is a name that we haven't seen for a season or two.
Yeah, I had to double check who the heck he was because the name was familiar, but I couldn't place it for the life of me. And the research that I then did into him didn't really illuminate me as much as I was hoping it might. Because he was very much, he's been around when I've been watching, but just very much on the far fringes of it. He got announced as a reserve driver for ECR, which I found quite amusing 4 races into the season. Normally, this is something you have done prior to the start of a season. But he had 2 seasons of Indy Pro 2000, P3 overall highest finish result there, followed by 2 seasons of Indy Next, P2 overall in 2023, and then only one race start in IndyCar in 2024 in Toronto, from which he retired. So he's gotten close to IndyCar, but not quite permanently in any way, shape, or form. And I know very little to nothing else about him. So if there's gaps that need filling in, this is your cue.
Yeah, I remember when he had his start in IndyCar at Toronto, and he looked strong from what I remember, and watching him in the pro. I remember him first from the Pro Series, and then obviously with a great run in 2023 and in Indy Next. That was a name that felt like it was going to be pretty high up on people's lists to bring into IndyCar, and then to only have one
P2,
start
you
feels
know?
like, yeah, it feels like he deserves a better shot at coming in, and maybe it's something where he does do another season in Indy next. I don't know. Maybe that's his ticket back
Well, they
to
have the
IndyCar. So
affiliation now with the Indy NXT teams at Carpenter
mhm,
Racing. They're obviously in there
yeah.
now, so that is more of a possibility potentially than before.
Mhm.
Also, we see driver moves happening all the time that we are scratching our heads over when it's announced. But you go, why on earth did you leave? So who knows? Maybe Rossi or Rasmussen decide they're better sorted elsewhere, and if that's the case, who knows?
Yeah,
Stranger things have happened.
that's very true. I mean, we look back at the season just what 3 seasons ago, 2 seasons ago, where McLaren went through a whole host of
Hmm.
drivers in one season. So
I mean,
strange, as you said,
strange,
stranger things have happened. So
strange things happening, including, I'm pretty sure, is this not the second Barber race in a row now that has not had any cautions?
it has been. Yes, that is correct.
You would not have
Uh,
put money on that.
well, this race, uh, just to kind of give initial thoughts on this race. This race felt like almost every race last season.
I know what you mean. Definitely the start of last season in
Y-
particular, I felt.
we had, a caution-free race that Alex Palou won by more than 10 seconds. It just felt like we were watching a replay of any number of races in 2025 to me. It
If it
wasn't a
wasn't for
bad
Graham
race.
Rahal, we
Yeah.
wouldn't have maybe noticed as well. Like, have you
Yeah.
put the wrong thing on, guys? Have you just, is there a delay?
Well, and I don't think it was a boring race. We've
No,
certainly had a host of those in recent years where there have been a few races where I would classify as boring. But this
I think
race,
this was one where the excitement got taken out of it
mhm,
towards the end. You
yeah,
look specifically at Aaron McLaren for
mhm,
that.
yeah,
Um, but I think otherwise it was just everyone sort of in that position again of half waiting, half not. But
mhm,
you've got a bunch of the big players out of position, and the tire strategy. You could hear Jack Harvey in commentary. It just got completely torn up and thrown out the window in terms of
yeah,
what everyone was expecting. So,
yeah,
and not even in a bad way. It's just this other strategies and all the other counter
yep,
strategies. They all just worked. So nothing. It's not a sort of thing of oh damn, this route plan A is not working. But I've got plan B, and then plan A blows up in some people's faces. It just they decided, oh, plan A is not going
yeah.
to work as well. We'll go for plan D, and that works perfectly. And things calamities happened as a result. That you're going, oh, okay, fair enough then.
You can kind of tell from how the commentators during a broadcast are commentating, broadcasting, how they're developing storylines as they talk through the race. And you could tell that they were struggling to find storylines. The second half of the race was definitely Graham Rahal heavy, we'll say.
They spent longer on this week's pick crew member from the NFL than they did at
Yeah,
the previous
yeah,
occasion in Texas or
yeah,
Phoenix,
yeah,
which I thought was very telling as well.
yeah. Um, the Lundgaard pit issue there later in the race also gave him plenty to talk about. But quite honestly, we we don't have to do a whole lot with our lap by lap analysis
No,
this
I was
week.
just thinking about it. This is possibly one of the shortest ones you've ever written because there really isn't that much to talk about in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah.
what happened from one thing to the other. You kind of, if we mention a driver or situation, then we essentially take that team out of the team by
I
team analysis.
I mean, realistically, we could probably talk more about what happened in practice and qualifying more than we could talk about the race.
Yeah, that's which yeah, you're kind of glad is not the right word, but what's the one I'm going to use? That something did happen in practice and qualifying because otherwise this might be a 20-minute job from start to finish.
Yeah. We had both Will Power and Scott McLaughlin having nasty accidents. That Scott McLaughlin accident in particular, um, incredibly lucky. We
Hmm.
we talked about it over the weekend, and something with the way that that barrier is built just seems wrong, I'd say.
Well, as I said to you in the message that I sent you, I didn't realize there wasn't a wall there as such. I thought this was a situation where there was a wall, higher barrier was in front of it, and the catch fencing, and it was all kind of layered. I didn't expect, so if you had an instance such as this, you're going to have something that stops you at least, because
Right.
otherwise you could, I don't know how much quicker you could get there potentially, but you could just go yeeting through that and just keep going from by the
Yeah.
looks of things. And because there's a bit of a drop there, that then adds a whole host of other nasty
Yeah.
ideas into the mix that you don't want to entertain.
I really hope that Barber does improvements with that barrier. Because if that, he went over the tire barrier into the catch fence and almost like
Hmm.
in between the two. And had that been a head on instead of a back end accident,
Hmm.
it would have been a much different story. It's scary to think about. Um,
I mean, you mentioned catch fencing. It's the kind of incident where to even mention catch fencing in the first place, you think, are we talking about F1 from the 70s and the 80s? Because that's the sort of kind of
right.
only line of defense that they had back then.
Yeah.
Whereas we're in 2026. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but you kind of need a bit more
Yeah.
in terms of
It's
safety
like
for that.
this is the series that developed safer barriers 20 plus years ago. And we're
Did
still
someone forget the
talking
memo?
about, yeah, we're still talking about tire barrier issues. And it just seems like, the FIA has such strict regulations on how barriers have to be built that why we
There's no
are
reason not to take advice from that to ensure that,
right. Yeah.
just because you're not
Yeah.
mandated, you
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's not a good idea.
Tracks have to meet a certain standard and get certified as FIA, grade one
Hmm.
course. And I'm not seeing that in IndyCar, unfortunately. And
Not a barber.
yeah, yeah. And so, um, unfortunately, with a lot of areas and tracks, you don't realize that it's a problem until something happens. And so
Hmm.
we got
I
lucky
do
with
wonder
this
how many
one.
other
Yeah.
tracks are going to now look at that in particular. Because I think for ovals, they, by their very nature, are sort of already built with that in mind
Yeah.
because they have to be. Whereas other Greek courses, I suppose you're a little bit limited, but again, worth investigating. But tracks like
Yeah.
Barber that we go to, you're going to want to look at them and go, right, let's just pull that tire barrier back. Oh, there's not a wall here either.
Yeah.
Right, we should get some
Yeah.
cement, guys. Let's sort this out.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Hay bales ain't going to cut it.
Yeah. Well, the race, like we said, was pretty milk toast. You had Alex Palou out in front pretty much the entire race, unless he was ducking into the pits to get tires. And even then, in that first stint, I mean, he stayed out longer than everybody else and
I mean, we're
came
so
out in
used to
what,
him staying
second
out longer than
place?
anyone else anyway. And
Yeah.
but at this point in the season, we weren't used to him being out in front properly. He's had to
Yeah.
be working his way there, and he's just this is how he gets there. Like, oh no, he's already now extending. I remember
Yeah.
seeing the qualifying highlights, and when he got pole, it was just oh fuck, everyone else is already on the back foot, and we've not even turned a wheel on Sunday yet.
I will say the beginning of the race, that first lap was very exciting and gave me a lot of hope. I'm like, oh, we're in store for a really close race. lots and lots of side by side racing through the first, 7, 8 turns before everybody kind of got sorted into a single order. I thought, oh man, this is going to be great. And then we saw minimal passing. Mostly, most of the passes were happening where cars were coming out of pits on cold tires. And
You had a few spots. You were either doing it down into turn one uh, with the aid of the pits or not, down into turn five, or maybe just
yeah,
having a little look round into the museum corner. If
yeah,
you were being a bit cheeky about it, but probably not going to happen there
yeah,
unless you're in a Porsche. But as you weren't, you're probably not going to do it there.
yeah. Well, Alex Palou, like we said, did win 13.2 seconds over Christian Lundgaard. And Graham Rahal finishes third by holding off Dave Malukas.
There's a sentence you didn't think you were going to say prior to the weekend.
Well, Dave Malukas looked good in qualifying and then kind of got shuffled back a spot or two early on. And it's like, well, okay, I guess that's just going to be his day. And that's ended up what it being. So,
But at the same time, I'm going to use this as a segue to get into my team analysis of Team Penske. The better performing of the three Team Penske drivers again.
yeah,
Qualifies second, finishes fourth, but still a damn sight better than the two other drivers. Um, McLaughlin, you can, have a bit of sympathy for. He was on the back foot after that
yeah,
shunt.
yeah,
Um, but then his qualifying was respectable considering all of the repairs that the team had to do and how
yeah,
the car is not necessarily going to be exactly the way it was prior. So qualifies 14th, but finishes 16th, which, I'm not saying he needs to be in the top five, but I would have thought he would have been at least on the edge of the top 10, maybe.
yeah,
You've got a strategy there where you can afford to take a couple of risks because what are you losing? Whereas Newgarden, okay, yeah, qualifies ninth, it's not terrible. Finishes 10th, it's not terrible. But you're also Joseph Newgarden, and he feels to me as if he's in a bit of an all or nothing mode this season. He's either winning or he's just not.
yeah,
And you're kind of glad that Malukas is there for the team because he's able to just paper over the
yeah.
other incidents within the team. That being said, amazed he couldn't get past Graham Rahal. How much push to pass did he have at the end of the race? And I know there's other factors that come into it, but it was just I
Yeah.
didn't want him to pass him, but I was amazed that he didn't.
Well, I don't know why he kept all that push to pass until the very end because, you're limited on how much push to pass you can use per lap. And so it's not
Hmm.
like you can just save it all up and just use 160 seconds of
Unlimited,
push
just
to
keep hitting the
pass.
button and
Just
just keep
keep
going
hitting the
until
button and run, your the fastest laps of the day on lap 89 and 90. Um,
30
you know,
second
it's
pole.
yeah, it's just uh I'm not sure why because he finished the race and still had what 60 seconds. He had a full minute of
Hmm.
push to pass left, and just I don't know whether the on that last stint I could kind of understand because of how early he had to pit, and I know that when you got down to the end, fuel was a concern for both Rahal and Malukas, and the last thing you want to do is run out of fuel and ruin a really good day. And it's one of those things where, okay, if I get past for third, yeah, it stinks, but at least I didn't run out of gas. Or I don't want to, be running fourth and try to make the podium and run out of gas and finish below Kiffin Simpson.
Well, that's all right. He'll get another penalty in a couple of weeks or something, so
Yeah, something
he'll
silly.
get put to the back anyway.
So
Yeah,
with
but
this
it's just
team,
just very intriguing.
yeah, with Penske, I don't think it's any doubt that they're going to win more races this season. I just think that it's just going to take the right circumstance for one of these drivers to put it all together. So my question to you is, Joseph Newgarden already has a win this season, but who do you think is going to be the next Penske driver to win a race this season?
Based on what we've seen so far, you'd have to say David Malukas because he's just been near the sharp end. So he's positioning himself in the right area to capitalize. That being said, we don't have that many races until the Indy 500, and while he's been
Mhm.
strong there, purely for the storyline purposes of redemption from last year, Scott McLaughlin to win the Indy 500 would be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I think once we get to the month of May, all three of these drivers are super strong candidates for a win in the 500.
I
Um,
personally want all three of them to be up for the win against Willpower because the storyline there just writes itself, and you don't really mind what happens there because
yeah,
it's all just juicy.
yeah. Um, Arrow McLaren. Yeah, we mentioned Christian Lundgaard with the second place. You know, if if he hadn't had that incident on pit road for that final pit stop, they're really super slow, super super. And I don't even know what the problem was with that right rear tire.
Mm.
The gun was sounding, so it was operating. I don't know
It,
whether
it, it wasn't
it
the Andretti problems from Arlington where you've got wheel nuts flying off left, right, and center.
it wasn't a wheel nut coming off, but I don't know whether it just didn't get seated right. The nut got cross-threaded. I don't know what happened, but it was a double pit stop. I mean, that was a over
17
17 second,
second.
yeah, 17-second pit stop. And I mean, they basically making two pit stops in one and just flat out took them out of the race uh, for a win. And I think there was a lot of commentators that were, a lot of people were talking about, if he would have had a good pit stop there at the end, he would have been able to take the fight to Alex Palou. And quite honestly, I don't believe he had it. I don't think he could have
Interesting.
beat Palou. I don't think he could have done it.
Um, I think he would have attempted to, and I then go with that of doesn't necessarily to beat him, but in an attempt, it could make things interesting, and we could then see Graham Rahal at the top of the podium with Malukas in second and Kirkwood in third.
Yeah,
But I think it almost doesn't matter if he could or not. It's just the fact that we were robbed of the opportunity to find out
that's true.
because
Yeah.
they looked at the gap, they looked at the pit stop and what it should have been, and worked out that he would have at least reached him, I think.
Mhm.
And if he'd continued on that pace, then he could have been winning by a few seconds, a little bit like Kirkwood did to Palou in Arlington,
In Arlington.
but just didn't happen. What I found fascinating though about it was that you had this storyline, and he's chasing him down, he's chasing him down, he's chasing him down. This happens. And you go, okay, well, at least everything's still fine with the car. It's just, Pitt's got messed up. But then he takes about 6 years to get past Graham Rahal. And you
Yeah.
go, this was the guy chasing down Alex Palou. How is he now struggling against Graham? No offense,
Yeah.
Graham, but you should be easier to get past than
Yeah.
Palou. How is that contrast was just baffling for me, but nowhere near as baffling as the performance of the other two Aaron McLaren drivers. I mean, Nolan Siegel, we're less surprised about, but Pato O'Ward, what on earth happened
Yeah.
to him this weekend? Because if we
Yeah.
thought David Lucas was papering over cracks, Christian Lundgaard's gone to the hardware store. He's getting even bigger bit of machinery.
Yeah.
I got bigger problems over here.
Yeah. I think, total, I went back and watched the broadcast, and I think between Award and Siegel, they maybe had 12 seconds of screen time in the entire
Part of that was
broadcast.
just Award getting out of Lundgaard's way so he could get chasing
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. It just,
Below.
yeah, it was just a non-weekend for both Award and Siegel, finishing 17th and 18th.
And qualifying for Pato wasn't exactly stellar either.
Yeah. Yeah. Andretti Global,
Better-ish. Although I am
Petra-ish.
suspicious of willpower because fourth race weekend of the year, and crashes again. I'm beginning to think he's contractually obliged to at
Yeah.
least once a weekend. It's getting a bit suspicious now. Um, Starts 23rd, finishes 12th, biggest mover, not bad.
Mhm.
I don't know if you would have seen either prior to the weekend. I was in said press conference, but he was amusingly very late to it because he ran out of fuel on his way home was trying to make it to the press conference and had to stop at the gas station. And his wife kindly took a lot of photos and then posted them online to show what a fool he had been. So he was about 15 minutes late in the end, and that was quite amusing. Um,
Well, he races for
Eric,
Andretti now. That's the kind of uh, strategy error that I would expect.
he was claiming he had enough fuel to coast up the drive, but he just miscalculated. So yeah, it's kind of maybe an interesting omen for the weekend. Um, Ericsson, yeah, weirdly quiet and consistent in a good way, which
Yeah.
I'm also just not used to saying. Um, Kirkwood doing what he needs to do. I think you're saying about how much we saw Pato over the race broadcast. We didn't really see Kirkwood that much either,
Yeah.
but in a more positive way. Qualifies fifth, rather, finishes fifth. And yeah, frustrating, but at least he's still there. He's still leading the championship
Hmm.
and he didn't hemorrhage too many points. It's acceptable. If you're not on the podium, you want to be in the top five. And he was
Right.
just in the top five.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought this was a really positive weekend for Ericsson. Um, it will hopefully give him a little bit of momentum. Driver that has had some misses this season already. So hopefully he can carry this forward. You know, for me, this is this felt like a rare weekend for Andretti where they weren't highlighting a mistake on pit road by one of the teams. And so we
And
got,
palm
I,
those
th-
people off to McLaren.
I think we got a fair representation of what the team is capable of at the end of a race. Um, I think Power's pit strategy helped him out a good amount,
He
which,
did what I thought McLaughlin should have done in terms of you're not got anything to lose, go
yeah,
for it and try
yeah.
something a bit different.
I think he was one of those drivers that the tire strategy that we mentioned earlier, you know, people thought there was that one thing was going to happen, and then we find out that it's the exact opposite of what's supposed to happen. And I think he was one of those drivers that came out on the winning end of that strategy. So yeah, and then Kirkwood, another driver like Award, like you said, that just felt like he was always there and around, but just didn't get highlighted a whole lot, which honestly, that's
He's
a
in
good
that.
thing. You don't want to be, a race that was, where they were struggling to find the storylines. Fifth
Hmm.
place is great because you didn't become one of the storylines that they had to find.
And he's in a perfect sniping position so that if Lundgaard and Pillow had duked out, if something had
That's
happened there,
true.
he
Yeah.
gets third without even trying then. So either
Yeah.
way, he sort of wins, which for him, you think big picture, you go back to what McLaughlin was saying at the start of the season about you're just aiming for consistency. If you can't win, you want to be in there to
Yeah.
try and see, while that still might not be enough to beat someone like Pillow, at least you can say, well, at least I wasn't finishing down in P20 or P12 or
Yeah.
whatever. I was at least always at the sharp end.
Well, speaking of Alex Palou over at Chip Ganassi Racing, as you mentioned, winner of this weekend's race. Um, like I said before earlier, it's just felt like a repeat of a whole lot of races we saw last season for Alex
This was
Palou.
the Pillow we were worried about seeing this year.
Yes. Yeah.
That we sort of saw a little bit in St. Petersburg, but then
Mm.
mostly didn't see for a couple of races. But now he's, I don't want to say he's back, but he returned for a weekend appearance. I'm glad Long Beach is next because of last year, and I go he was strong there, but
Mm.
so is the guy who's taking the fight to him. So I've got a
Right.
little bit of hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Kiffin Simpson felt like this was a regular weekend for him, qualifying 19th, finishing 20th. And Scott Dixon, gosh, I this is one of the few tracks that he has not won at.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of felt like after qualifying, he qualified 13th, and you're like, all right, this is gonna be one of those sneaky Scott Dixon weekends where we can
So
he
not
just
most weekends.
yeah, he's gonna find his way in the front at the end of the race. Didn't quite find his way up to the front, but finished seventh, and that just continues a string of top tens that he has at this track.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the other drivers who qualified ahead of him, and he just snuck on past them. You go,
Yeah,
you'd be annoyed if it wasn't Scott Dixon, but because it's Scott Dixon, you're like, oh, if it was going to be someone, I'm not surprised it's him.
yeah.
But it just seemed like a very Route One weekend for that whole team. Everyone was
Mm.
sort of where you expected them to be, which for me feels a little bit harsh on Kiffin, but at the same time, not.
Yeah. Really not much else to report on on them. I just
Route One,
like you
like I
said,
say,
yeah, it's just kind of this is our weekend. We won it. We're going home with the trophy, and that's
job
it.
done.
Meyer Shank Racing, Marcus Armstrong and Felix Rosenquist. Uh, Pretty good weekend, I thought, all around.
Yeah, not bad. I think Rosenquist's qualifying let me down a
Yeah,
little bit there.
yeah.
18th. I expect a bit better of him. So yeah, he made up positions, but 13th is still a bit frustrating now. Armstrong, however, he's quietly going about his business, and I
Hmm.
like that. We don't see him, we don't hear
Hmm.
from him, and he just puts in these solid performances across both rather Saturday and Sunday. I was looking at the championship standings, and I don't think he's going to factor into it as a genuine contender. He's more like going to be best of the rest, but he's just on the fringes of those bottom end of the top sort of
Well,
drivers in that leading pack. And I think if he keeps up that sort of consistency, he might take a couple of them down along the way and go, Meyer Shank either offer me a longer contract or I wouldn't be surprised if someone else looks at him
yeah.
because
I think if there's one driver other than Alex Palou that's having a season just like last season, it's Marcus Armstrong. You know, it felt like it wasn't until the second half of the season where we were looking at the championship point standings. We're like, oh, look, Marcus Armstrong's in sixth place in the point standings. Look, Marcus
mm,
Armstrong's in fourth place in the point standings. And it's like he just kind of snuck in there to be in the top five, top six in the points. And you're like, really good for this smaller team. And you mentioned contracts. I don't know whether this is a contract year for Marcus or not, but even if it isn't, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bigger team that takes a really strong
Chip
fat
Ganassi.
wallet look. Yeah, fat look at him. I mean, we talked about Kiffin Simpson in the last episode where, we need to start seeing more from him or he's going to be on the
I
chopping
would
block in
say
the
he and Nolan Thielen in particular. I don't see Penske or Andretti changing any of their drivers for
no.
next season, but those are the two teams. They have a legitimate seat where you go, if that's what you can do in a mid-field
Mhm.
team that's punching a little bit above its weight, then I
Yeah.
wonder what you could do in a McLaren or under the guidance of Palou and Dixon. You'd be kind of crazy not to at least consider it.
Right. One thing I found funny in the pre-race was, they're going through the driver introductions, the
Mm,
pre-recorded,
I hate them
segment
so
to,
much.
just the driver's like, I'm so and so, I'm from
Mm.
here, and they get down to Marcus Armstrong, and he's like, I'm Marcus Armstrong, I'm a world-class Guitar Hero player.
I did not see that this time around. I did
Yes,
wonder
yeah.
what your note was about.
Yeah. He didn't tell us where he's from. He just said he's a world-class Guitar Hero player. And
Fair enough.
I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to play Guitar Hero, but
Not for a very long time, and I
yeah,
don't think I'd be boasting about it.
yes, neither have I. I mean, it's probably been 15 years since I've played Guitar Hero. And so the fact that there's this, we'll call him a young kid that, might have been 3 years old when that game came out. And he's now all of a sudden claiming to be the world-class Guitar Hero player. I just thought that
Well,
was
when we
funny.
inevitably do an in-person record of this podcast, we've got an activity sorted for afterwards. Is what I'm
That's
hearing.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I think I would, I like the driver introductions, but I really wish that uh, some more of the personality of the drivers could shine through like this because, like personalities like willpower are going to have
Well, that
something
was that
really,
was
really
half the
funny to
reason I
say.
sat in on the press conference when I knew he was there. I was like, this is going to be chaos one way or the other. And sure enough, he turns up late. The reason he was late, he was getting his elbow drained from some kind of cystic fluid, so it was already off to an incredible start, regardless of the technical havoc that he had
Yeah.
during the record. Anyway, like we don't see enough of this.
I don't know, in European football, do they even have player introductions before the games?
I
None of
am
the
the
games
wrong
that I get to,
person for that.
yeah, none of the games that we see here in America are there any player introductions. It's just
I
really
think
just
the
a
only
list
the
of
only
starters, but
sport of any time I see it is IndyCar, and
mm,
I don't like
yeah.
it either. It just seems so odd and awkward and cringe. And it's like, just show me on a graphic who's where. I don't need to know anything else.
We get it here in American football, where during like the first drive of the game, they'll have a little scroller at the bottom where they'll pop up the guy's kind of image, and he'll be like, this is Antonio so and so from the University of Florida, but a lot of times it'll just be like, I'm so and so, and I'm we're gonna win, or yeah, just kind of they're not always introducing their school or their hometown, and I just think it throws an extra layer of personality or personal touch to give a little bit of connection to the viewers. But we'll see if they re-record those going forward. I don't.
They got to do something with them because I just do not care for them one bit at the moment.
I would imagine that that's something they recorded once at the beginning of the season and just use
Hmm.
over and over again. I can't imagine that they're recording those for every race.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
I actively, anytime it comes up, if I'm watching that early or if I get there in time, then that bit comes on, I actually either walk away or put it on mute. I don't care for the next 30 seconds.
Uh, Ed Carpenter Racing. Um, you felt disappointed in your notes. You said you felt disappointed with this team this race.
Yeah, to be honest. Rasmussen in particular, I think, 17th qualifies, finishes 19th. Rossi, maybe I'm being harsh, but it's a little bit like Meyer Shank. They are this team that's punching up. They're kind of doing this big uppercut, it feels like at the
Yeah.
moment. And so 11th, I guess I'm happy to be disappointed, but I'm also disappointed.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it. They feel like they're just on this forward momentum bound, and then they have a race like this one, and yeah, it's just not there. But I did get to see some of their advertisements with Java House over the weekend, and I am enjoying those at least. So there's silver
Gary.
linings for
Yeah.
everything. Gary,
Gary.
exactly.
Gary from Java House. Well,
I'm going to
I
listen to
enjoy
Gary
those.
a bit more, huh?
Yeah. They, for me, Rossi, there were points during the race during pit cycles where he was running up towards the front. And I think if the tire strategies would have gone the way that they thought they were going to go at the beginning of the race, where the red alternates were going to be the preferred tire, I think we probably would have seen him farther up in the standings. Um, the fact that he was one of the few drivers that, other than Alex Palou starting on the pole and winning,
Mm.
he's one of the few drivers that finished where he started, and I think that just shows that maybe this team was able to adjust their strategy midway through the race and say, okay, the strategy we were on wasn't working. Let's switch gears and try this other
Implementation, I
strategy. And yeah.
suppose.
So I think that, if that's the case, then I think that shows some maturity for this team. Um, so good things moving
You're
forward, I
taking the
hope.
carrot, I'm taking the stick. We've got our
Yeah.
approaches.
I think once we get to the the oval heavy part of the season,
Mm.
I think we're going to start to see more from Christian Rasmussen.
I hope so.
Yeah, I
So
think,
it's what he's known for.
yeah, it is what he's known for, and I think that's going to be where we're going to start to see him, not have these. I don't want to say subpar races because I think everybody had a on par race this weekend, and that's why it felt so uh, tame. But yeah, once we get to those smaller ovals where we know he's capable of really pulling out all the stops, I think it's going to be a lot more exciting for the
I
for
don't know
that
if we'd
team.
ever get a race there, but I would be interested to see what Rasmussen could do in IndyCar around the paperclips, as it's such a small oval. Just to see how quickly he zooms around. I'd be thinking he's going to do some Christopher Reeves sort of Superman style, turning the Earth back in the other direction with the speed he's going at.
A.J Foyt Enterprises. This is, I don't know, I felt like it was an okay weekend, especially for Santino Ferrucci.
Yeah, fourth time's the somewhat charm for him in terms of having a decent race finally. Qualifies seventh, finishes eighth. But you're saying about how Rossi was one of the few drivers to finish where he started. Well,
Yeah.
Coca also did this. The
Well,
downside of
yeah,
that is it was
yeah,
21st.
yeah,
Um, the team for me just feels very out of shape though. So far this year, in comparison to last year in particular, I don't want to say that Malukas was carrying it because it didn't feel like it was solely on his shoulders last year. Ferrucci was right there with him
yeah.
for many of the races, but yeah, it's something just feels a bit off. in I'm not quite sure
Well,
what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it.
Cal Collette, although I feel like is a good hire, he had awful big shoes to fill with Malukas going to Penske.
Hmm.
And so I think maybe that's where we're feeling like this team
But I don't
is
know what I
falling
was necessarily expecting from him anyway.
true. But I think that might be part of the reason why we feel like this team is not performing to where we thought they'd be performing is just because we've brought in a Indy Next rookie to fill the shoes of someone who's now the leading member at one of the biggest teams in the series.
Suppose I don't mind Colette doing what he's been doing if Ferrucci was at least up there consistently. But this is the first race where he's actually been up there in the mix a bit.
Mhm.
And even when he was in the mix, it still didn't feel like he was there. You saw his name high up on the timing tower, but in terms of on-screen action, you didn't see that much from him. Um, and so I think, if you're not going to see too much of one car, you want to see more of the other, especially when you have the reputation that Ferrucci has.
Yeah.
And we just haven't really been getting that. So I think I'd let Kyle get away with, not being up to scratch yet. Rookie, fair
Yeah.
enough. You're not all going to be blinders. But Ferrucci is just, I think maybe that's where the more confusion and frustration comes from for me with the team because I'm going, one of you should be up there. And it's not meant to be Colette. If it happens, that's great. But that then just makes you look even worse, Santino.
Well, yeah, I think Santino Ferrucci is another driver like Christian Rasmussen where we're expecting greener pastures once we get to the oval sections
I just don't
of the
like
schedule.
waiting. I think, you've both been around for a little bit now. You should be getting better at some of the courses
Yeah.
that aren't ovals. It's just how this is meant to work if you want a long career in the sport.
Okay. Are you saying that you think you could go to Barber and finish better than eighth?
I'm not saying that at all. Although you didn't specify an IndyCar, so depending on what the mode of transport is I'm allowed to use,
Gotcha.
we can have a talk about it. Weenie 500 mobile, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. I think they would probably have. I think
Would
those
you imagine the
Wienermobiles.
789 complex with the
Yes,
logos?
that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to think about that.
Oh,
Those things
three wide
rolling
down there.
over,
Oh,
rolling over in a turn. Yeah, or bottoming out even. Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. We talked about Graham Rahal having a a great weekend, which is something we don't get to talk about a whole heck of a lot with Graham. It feels like.
no, Bill Buxton was saying I need to go and watch it a little bit. So I'm kind of annoyed I didn't prior to the weekend now, but he did a small piece I think with the team and with him in particular that came out before the weekend.
Yeah.
And Ray was talking about his longevity in the sport. I hadn't realized he'd been there as long as he has been,
Mhm.
um, and why he's still there and his motivation with kids and everything. And I kind of I wouldn't be necessarily losing any sleep if he left IndyCar at the end of the season, but I do think it's a better series with him in and characters like him
Yeah.
because it gives you this alternative storyline. You get this underdog, you get this Fernando Alonso type of longevity with
Mhm.
him that you just don't have for so many other drivers. And on his day, he gets a podium, he can get a win, he's in the mix for it, and you heard Buxton again in commentary going, I know I'm supposed to be neutral, but I really don't want Lundgaard or Malukas to get past him.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Lundgaard did. But again, took him way longer than it should have. And then
Mhm.
Rahal was able to put
Yeah.
his 67 years of experience into play and kept Malukas behind him. And I loved that. And he's the third driver on the list that we're talking about here that you're talking about papering over cracks for the rest of your team for this weekend. Boy, oh boy, did I'm hoping he went along with Christian and David to the hardware store because they could get a nice 3-for-1 deal there.
Yeah. Schumacher really was a non-starter. And I mean, Louis Foster, I don't know what happened with these guys. I mean, finishing 24th and 25th with
Incredibly
their
close
other,
battle for those positions, but my God, it was not
yeah,
what you wanted.
yeah, you don't want your teammate, you got one teammate that's battling up front for a podium, and then the other two are duking it out for who's going to finish next to last.
Mm.
you know.
And again, nothing against Nick there, but you're expecting it to be him. So for him to still then come out on top of Louis then was also a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah. Yeah, they were talking about uh, the last time that Graham stood on the podium, and they
I feel
were
so sorry for him hearing this.
well, they were talking about, he'd had third place finishes in the 500 and Iowa and Texas, but they don't do podiums at oval tracks. And so they went back, a long way, it felt like, with Mid Ohio or something. But I was going back through his record because I was like, I know that he has finished on the podium. And in 2023, he finished runner up at the Harvest GP.
It was the Indianapolis road
Yeah,
course or something, wasn't it?
yeah. So I was at that race, and I think that's probably why I was like,
I'm
"Oh,
glad you remember
of
it then.
course, yeah, I'm glad I remembered it." Um, but I don't know whether or not they do podium. I mean, I know there's a podium behind Winter Circle, right up next to the pagoda, and so I don't know whether they don't use it for that course. But when I went back to find information about that Harvest GP race, I was quite shocked on how hard it is to find information on that race.
How
Like,
bizarre.
I mean, I went through Wikipedia, I went through IndyCar. It was just really hard to find any details other than finishing order about those races. We only ran those races for 4 years, and always loved it. Great having a fall race in
Hmm.
Indianapolis, and I just a reason it kicked off the trying to find information about this race was there's an asterisk next to his second place finish in Indy at the Harvest GP on the Wikipedia page for this season. And so I'm just like, why is there an asterisk there? What is that for? Couldn't find any information on
Oh, I shall have to investigate now. I'm
it.
intrigued. Let me see if I can find anything, but you can't.
Yeah, we give Graham a hard time in a lot of cases because here in recent years he just hasn't shown really any spark of potential. We're just like, okay, here's another old timer driver that's been around
I
for a
love how
long
you
time.
said we've been quite harsh on him, implying that you were about to be nicer, and then you just dug the knife into you.
So I'm gonna give you some trivia here. I'm gonna
Oh
give you a
no.
chance to
Okay,
answer.
go on.
How many races did it take for Graham to get his first IndyCar victory?
Oh, see, I may have, without meaning to, preempted you here. Was it two?
It was one. He
One.
won in his very first race.
I mean, maybe he just peaked too soon.
Well, you go back through and his first race was in 2008,
Hmm.
and his best season was in 2015, which doesn't seem that long ago. In reality, it was 11 seasons
We don't
ago.
need to focus on
But
how long it was ago.
he finished fourth that season. And then in 2016, he finished fifth. 2017, he finished sixth in the points. And so, you know, it's even not even that long ago. I mean, he finished, well, let's see, 2020, he finished sixth in the points. 2021, he finished seventh in the points. So 2022 is right around the time that I started doing these IndyCar podcasts.
Hmm.
So maybe it's just like, oh, I've
It's
only
your
had
fault.
these bad things to talk about them. Um, so yeah, so uh, maybe we're seeing a resurgence. He's finished in top
I
10
would.
in half the races so far this season. So
That's true. I would just put the asterisk next to that saying we said that after Sonsio last year, and
yeah,
then
that's
nothing
true.
happened.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, but I would like it to be an upswing because, again, not expecting him to be the driver to topple Alex Palou, but oh my God, I'd take it.
Hey, you never know. I mean, we go to Long Beach in a couple weeks, and then we go back to the road course at Indy, which I think is
Hmm.
probably one of his best tracks.
Definitely.
So as far as records go,
We're still at the
so
point in the season where we can dream about these things,
we
and
we
it's
sure can.
somewhat realistic.
um, Dale Coyne Racing. This was a hard weekend, I feel like, for this team.
For two very different reasons.
Yeah.
Hauger, I think I don't want to say he peaked in St. Petersburg. We joked about it at the time, and I'm regretting that we did that now because we may have cursed him. But yeah, he's very much just learning the ropes. Finishes towards the back end of the grid. He was stuck down there with Stingray
Mhm.
and Nick and Louis.
Yeah.
But Grosjean comes out of nowhere, qualifies in sixth,
Yeah.
and then the one driver this bloody tire strategy doesn't work for in any
Yes.
way. And
Yeah.
he drops like a stone down to P15. And you had to be a bit gutted for him.
Yeah. I wonder if part of that was, you know, a lot of teams, they were, really banking on that red alternate tire strategy being the one. And, for him, this Barber's always been a pretty good track for Grosjean. And so, but I'm wondering if they blew through an allotment of red alternate tires to get him into that fast six. And then come race time, they're stuck using all of
Essentially
these used
expecting
sets.
more calamities to happen
Yeah.
elsewhere on the circuit to take advantage of it. And
Yeah.
then, as is the way, nothing happens.
Yeah. So, yeah, unfortunate weekend for Grosjean. I think he
It's nice to see
should have
that,
been
though, that
better.
he
Yeah.
had that potential because, it
Yeah.
wasn't the lack of ability, it was just
Mm,
the strategy that then scuffed it for him.
mm, yeah. And finally, Juncos Hollinger Racing. I feel like this was just another nondescript weekend for a team. I kind of expected a little bit more from Renus VK, qualifying 16th and finishing 14th, but uh,
I'm gonna have to borrow
yeah,
your catchphrase of milk toast, I think.
yeah,
Um, Although the one thing I didn't end up putting him as my not in the not hot section for the awards that we'll get to in a moment. Stinger Rob was very almost there because I don't know if you saw in practice his impeding of Roman Grosjean. It was beyond rookie in terms of an error. And I was just so bemused by it. And I just thought, I'm trying to give you chances to
yeah,
prove why you deserve to be here. And you just keep finding more ways to frustrate me. And I'm not necessarily the biggest Roman Grosjean fan out there, but even that, I thought that's just unnecessary, dangerous driving there. And he was just right in the way, didn't move. Grosjean's coming at him to speed, and you just go, get out the way.
yeah,
What are you doing? And it was lucky there wasn't another big accident because of that.
yeah, yeah, agreed. Um, yeah, I think well, we get to our awards. I think I think we are in a consensus here on who our hot driver for the weekend is going to be.
Get the calendar out. I think it's Graham Rahal.
Yeah, yeah. We'll put this one down, and I hope, fingers crossed, we get to mention him again as a hot driver this season. Certainly, the commentators over at Fox want the same.
Well, again, it's the kind of driver that you don't get to talk about often enough in a positive way, and you're not expecting it. So you got to capitalize on it when it happens. And I think you need that feel good story, you need that underdog
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
resurgence potentially, like you were saying about. And you love to see it. You like it when someone comes out of the blue, and a little bit like Soncio last year, where he did it. And you go, surely not. He's going to be the one to beat Alex below. Madness. Didn't
Yeah,
do it, but it was nice to dream for a second. Though.
yeah. Who was your not hot for the weekend?
Aaron McLaren. Pit stop alone is worth sticking him in the bin for. But then when you take Pato and Nolan into consideration as well, you just go, what on earth are you doing? It seems that either their one team can do well or their IndyCar team can do well, but both cannot be true on the same weekend.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was the rest of Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing.
So
You have Graham finishing on the podium, and then your other two drivers are finishing next to last and dead last. Um,
it reminds me of some
there's
kind of comedy sketch that I can't quite pinpoint right now, but it's this sort of compare and contrast situation of look at us, we're so strong. Like, what are you two doing?
yeah. Who's your hard luck for this weekend?
Roman Grosjean.
Yeah.
It's I don't necessarily think he would have finished in sixth, but I think a top 10 was on. And yeah, that it's just the definition of bad luck. And Mick will be glad that I haven't put him in the hard luck category. He won't be glad that I didn't put him in there because he just didn't do brilliantly this weekend, and
Yeah,
there wasn't any
yeah,
reason for it. So
yeah. For me, it's definitely Christian Lundgaard. You know, had an opportunity to take the fight to Alex Palou, and then that last pit stop just takes him out of it.
yeah.
And you know, like I mentioned earlier, I don't know whether he had what it took to catch and pass
Mm.
Alex Palou. I mean, catching Alex Palou is one thing, and then trying to pass him would be a totally separate uh, charge to have to take on. Uh, but
We just
we,
want to
like you
see it
said,
at least.
we
We
just
want
wanted to
to have the
see it. Yeah,
opportunity.
yeah. But yeah, having that issue with the pit stop, definitely a hard luck vote in my book. So,
I agree with
but
that.
we were treated with two Indy Next races this weekend. The first one definitely had some drama there at the
Yeah,
end.
I messaged you afterwards, making sure that you'd had the chance to see it, and I didn't get to watch it live, but I'd caught the highlights going, damn, we had a bit of a corker there. And
Yeah,
I've kind of been touching base with him next a little bit less this year than I have in previous years, just because there isn't that one driver that I am especially rooting for, or interested to see how it pans out. But that sort of made the racing more interesting in a way because they're all just free falling with each other, and it showed.
yeah. So I'm probably getting a little bit more Indy Next exposure this year than you are, only because all of their races are being televised here this year
Yeah.
and uh, live, not tape delayed. And so, um, you know, kudos to Fox for that. I think that's a huge step in the right direction for developing the sport more. Where we get on the NASCAR side. I mean, there's three series below NASCAR's
Mm.
top series that we get weekly coverage of here. And so for IndyCar's feeder series, directly below them to get that kind of exposure is definitely a step in the right direction. But yeah, that first race, you had uh, DeTulio and Max Taylor gunning it out for the lead in the closing stages of the race. And they were just so close. You just knew that something was going to happen. It's just like something was going to happen. And both those drivers ended up really taking themselves out.
Hmm.
And uh, Nikita Johnson was able to uh, pounce. And it was,
It was kind
it's,
of what I was hoping would have happened in the IndyCar race.
yeah,
If we'd have
right.
Lundgaard up there,
Yeah.
you see the dicing and slicing, and then you get
And
these
then
drivers like
Graham
Fittipaldi and
Rahal just went
Kuchar
through.
getting to benefit.
Yeah.
You go, excellent.
Yeah, yeah. So Enzo Fittipaldi had a second place finish, which is great. The second race was just kind of more of the same as far as the running order, but you didn't have Taylor and DeTulio taking each other out. So DeTulio
No.
winning the second race, Max Taylor finishing second. Uh, Nikita Johnson, with his win and third place in the second race, does lead the championship by 23 points over Max Taylor at this point. So,
Yeah, I think he was in Formula 3 possibly either last year or the year before. Didn't leave much of an impression. So whenever that uh, driver of that sort of caliber goes into a series like in next, I'm always intrigued to
yeah,
see what happens there. This is clearly more his speed.
yeah,
Um, and it's just quite interesting to see. And yeah, like you say, you look at Fittipaldi, Kucharczyk, and no, mainly just those two. Actually, maybe Missick to an extent. They're consistently in that top five area, and they're
mhm,
just keeping themselves in the mix there. But you want to be doing what Johnson's doing, and if you're not winning, you're still on the podium. And that's
right.
on, especially on a double header weekend. That momentum we talk about sometimes
Mhm,
about how you can carry that through, positive or negative.
yeah,
That's a good way of positive side of it, and staying
yeah,
out of trouble.
yeah. Unfortunately, we have a long break for Indy next.
Yeah.
Because they won't be in Long Beach, and so we won't see them again until doubleheader in May on the Indy Road Course. So, really looking forward to catching those races. Those are always ones that I really like watching, and uh, we'll if I don't make it out to the first one, I'll definitely be at the second one because it's the lead up to the Grand Prix. So, um, so I'll be out there for those, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think like last season where we turned our attention to Indy Next because of the runaway that we were seeing in IndyCar. Um, I hope we don't have to do that again this season.
I don't think we're at risk of that just yet with either. And I like that for Indy Next in particular because there wasn't an obvious driver on that
There
list
wasn't,
of
yeah,
entries this
Hauger,
year that
yeah,
I thought, oh, someone's going to go there. Whereas Helga, I think we expect him to do well, just maybe not as well as we thought.
yeah.
And because we'd had Foster doing that the year before, we thought, oh, we could do with a bit of a free fall. And we've actually got it so
Yeah.
far. No one's
Yeah.
running away with it just yet, which is
Yep.
excellent. Keep it
Yeah.
that way, please.
Well, like we mentioned, Long Beach coming up in a couple weeks. Well, we got how many days? Oh, 19 days, 10 hours, 21 minutes until that race. We've got some previous winners in the field. Um, there are five previous winners. There's going to be another trivia for you. I
Well,
have a
Carl
feeling that
Kirkwood.
I have a feeling that you're going to get at least four of these, and the fifth one may be a little tricky.
Well, Carl Kirkwood, I'm going to assume Scott Dixon and Will Power.
Yep, and yep.
Um, Newgarden,
Newgarden, you got
I
number
suspect
four.
he's one there.
Yep.
Is Pelot one here?
Pelot has not won
No,
here.
there's not one here. Who've we got? Scotty Mack, maybe?
Nope.
No? Okay, this is going to get tricky then. Running out of drivers already. That's
Like I
not good.
said,
Max Ericsson?
the fifth one is going to be a tricky one. It's not Ericsson either.
No, put me out of my misery then because I'm after people who had a tribute to race fans.
And this is a two-time winner, back to
Oh,
back
damn.
in 18 and 19, Alexander Rossi.
This is why I was disappointed with P11.
That's right. I was rolling back through the previous winners of Long Beach, and every year when I do this and I go back through and I look at the previous winners, I'm always surprised to see Mike Conway's name on the list
Yeah,
of
he's not
winners.
known for IndyCar, really, is he?
Yeah, no, he is not. And he's a two-time winner.
Oh, no.
So, so definitely had that track figured out. But yeah, really looking forward to it. We got that, like I said, we got about 3 weeks before that race comes up. So we got a little bit of a break, but then that kind of segues us into the month of May. I think we all know
And
I am
it's
particularly looking
non-stop
forward
from
to
there.
it. Yeah. So, but we'll be back to cover all the action from Long Beach here in a few weeks, and we'll see everybody then.